Welcome back to Adam Talks NFL. In today's episode, we're going to be going through part two of our NFL award series. That'll include the AFC North team. So that'll include the Baltimore Ravens, the Cleveland Browns, the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, thank you so much for tuning into this video. A like, a subscribe would be so helpful to help grow the channel. And without further ado, let's jump right into the Baltimore Ravens. One of the best quarterbacks in the NFL is on the Baltimore Ravens, and that is going to be the MVP of this team, Lamar Jackson. And I spoke a lot in the first video about how if Josh Allen was off the field, for example, this team would just look a lot worse. The Bills would look a lot worse. That was almost put into practice here with the Baltimore Ravens in 2025. Lamar Jackson missed some time due to injury, missed a couple of games here or there. And you could really tell that whenever he was off the field, this team just did not look good, did not look anywhere close to when he is on the field. So in terms of value that he provides to this team, he is definitely the top notch there. I mean, you know who Lamar Jackson is if you're a fan of the NFL. He's an elite runner, an elite passer, and someone who really has solidified himself as one of the best quarterbacks in this league. Obviously, a two-time MVP winner, just has to do a little bit more in the playoffs to really get into that elite level tier, but I think Lamar Jackson is easily deserving of the MVP for Baltimore. The offensive player of the year is going to go to Derrick Henry, the running back. Also in a good season for him. The only thing that kind of deteriorates him is the consistency. Had some games where he's had like 100, 150 yards, the traditional Derrick Henry type game, but then there are other games where he barely can eclipse 50. And I think that Derrick Henry just, again, he was himself this season, but not to the consistent level that he was with Tennessee. And so Derrick Henry still takes home the offensive player of the year reigns. He still was one of the league's best backs. But you can obviously, kind of tell if you're watching Derrick Henry that he is slowing down just a tad bit. He still will be good for the next 2 or 3 years, but the running back position in and of itself is just a very it's not a long-ended career for most running backs, but Derrick Henry's really almost paved a way for a good pipeline between being a good running back for so long and then still being consistently within the league, being one of the top 10 backs, and Derrick Henry just does that at an elite level. Kyle Hamilton is going to be the defensive player of the year here. Just a generational talent at safety, the highest paid safety in the National Football League. He can go end to end on this defense. He can play the traditional safety role. He can play in the slot. He can pretty much play every defensive back position outside of maybe I would say boundary corner, but Hamilton really carved a way for himself to be one of the best safeties in the league. Did actually have a down year, but even his down years are just sensational, and he's just easily worthy of this defensive player of the year nomination rather. And I just think that there weren't a whole lot of star-studded defensive players on this team last year. But Hamilton was one of the bright spots that I think really was the anchor for most of the defensive mentality. And the best rookie is going to go to Malachi Starks. They could have gone with linebacker Teddy Buchanan, who had a nice role kind of filling in for that Roquan Smith Mike linebacker role, but Malachi Starks is going to take home the reins as the best rookie. Similarly, like to almost Kyle Hamilton, he can be end-to-end. He can be a hard hitter. He can play in coverage. It took a little bit of time for him to really kind of transition into the role of being that starting safety for Baltimore. Like, getting used to the NFL level of play is obviously difficult as it is, but Malachi Starks, once he got the burners going, he really, took on a whole new level of play. And I think that the more that he acclimates himself to NFL talent, I think he'll just become better and better and learn under some guys like Kyle Hamilton, for example. And so I think that having Malachi Starks there alongside Kyle Hamilton will really be a long-ended, a long-ran safety duo that I think can be a scary, scary duo going forward. And the most surprising player is going to be Travis Jones. Jones, who was one of the best nose tackles last season, defensive tackles, I guess, in the scheme that the Ravens play. But Travis Jones was really just a solid player for a good majority of the season. He was the leader in sacks for Baltimore this season, I believe, and really just generated a lot of pressure up in the middle, which is tough because centers and guards, it's tough to get around those guys who are pretty rigid, pretty stable. But Travis Jones in the middle of that defense was just a powerhouse, and I think that as long as you keep that guy around, he can really be another defensive weapon. You still have Metabuike coming back. You had Kyle Van Noy still in that system. You could draft a guy in this upcoming NFL draft. So Travis Jones definitely surprised a lot of people for the consistency that he had, the production that he had, and I think that he can definitely still develop into even a better player. I can definitely see that happening. And then the most disappointing player is going to be Marlon Humphrey. I kind of went back and forth between a couple players here, but Marlon Humphrey, despite what the metrics say, I mean, he did have 4 interceptions, did play most of the season, but Marlon Humphrey just was terrible when it came to passing coverage, when it came to running coverage. Like tackling was just not good as a whole. I think that Marlon Humphrey's career in Baltimore is most likely done. It seems like he's kind of moved on from the team here, and I think that um, overall Marlon Humphrey just had his prime, had his good 2 or 3 years, but similarly to a lot of guys, rather, it just becomes a tough position to really stay consistent at for long periods of time. The quarterback position, I would say, is the hardest position to play in football, and I think that it's tough to really stay at a consistent level when teams change, coverages change, schemes change. Like it changes a lot. The league is not a solid, rigid league. It's something that adapts and changes as it progresses. And I think that being a quarterback in the National Football League, it takes a different type of athlete. It takes a different type of person in terms of their mentality. And I think that Marlon Humphrey, as much as he is a great player in this league, I think his time is ultimately up with Baltimore. I'm sure he could find another team pretty easily, but just did not play well despite what despite what the metrics say. Like I mentioned earlier, 4 interceptions, but how do you think he got those four? I mean, they were just targeting him left, right, and center. So Marlon Humphrey just, I think, needs to find a new team, find a new scheme, maybe, and maybe go ball out somewhere else. We move on here to the Cincinnati Bengals, where Jamar Chase is going to take home the MVP. Jamar Chase is maybe the best receiver in football. It's kind of a debate between him, Jefferson, Puka Nakua, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. But Jamar Chase, for the past 3 or 4 years, he's been with the Bengals, has really just been an incredible receiver, someone who's been a extremely reliable target for Joe Burrow. There was obviously the concern that he, had some drops in the preseason. But Jamar Chase is just looking like an incredible receiver talent. And I think that without Jamar Chase on this roster, the Bengals would look a lot different. I mean, it was kind of an up and down season for the Bengals, rather. I think that there were definitely some highs, definitely some lows. But Jamar Chase was kind of that consistent receiver that Joe Burrow can rely on. T. Higgins was there as well, and a couple other guys. But Jamar Chase is easily just going to take home the MVP for the Bengals, just because he was the most able to be there. I mean, the greatest ability is accountability. That's not how the saying goes, but the greatest what is it? The greatest ability is reliability. No, whatever it is, whatever. It doesn't matter what the quote is. The point is, Jamar Chase was there despite when Joe Burrow was off the field, when Joe Flacco was in, when other guys were in at the quarterback spot. Like, he was just there to be that guy. And so I think Jamar Chase is just there to be the MVP for sure. Chase Brown is going to take home the Offensive Player of the Year. Had a sneaky good season, 1,400, I think, 1,400 total scrimmage yards. Just someone who was reliable when it came to some of the passing, some of the running. He was an outlet for like what Joe Burrow was trying to run when the play wasn't able to be created downfield. Chase Brown was there as like the dump, someone who can kind of be a safe option there in case you don't want to take the risky play. And Chase Brown kind of made the most out of it despite having kind of a underrated season. DJ Turner the second is going to be the Defensive Player of the Year. He was the best cornerback for this team. You kind of expected it to be Cam Taylor-Britt, but it wasn't, unfortunately. DJ Turner was kind of almost a replacement in that sense. He was solid in man and zone coverage, was kind of a good focal point on the boundary there. And I think that as long as they keep Turner around, maybe add a couple more guys like Caleb Downs or some other guys within the draft, I think that this defensive back room could be nice going forward. But I always feel like the Bengals just have a tough time trying to find that reliable cornerback one. You hoped it would be Taylor-Britt, as I just mentioned, but DJ Turner kind of steps into that role and really was, I mean, it could also have been the most surprising player, but DJ Turner is going to be the Defensive Player of the Year. The best rookie and the most surprising is going to go to Dylan Fairchild, the offensive guard. Third rounder. I feel like when you're a third round pick, especially at offensive line, I don't know what to really expect from that. He could either be a backup, he could, be a plug and play guy like Fairchild was here. But for a struggling offensive line, that's almost been the point of emphasis for the Bengals for such a long time now. Dylan Fairchild comes in and starts at the guard spot and really just kind of took over. He was probably the best guard in the draft. Not based on like where he was positioned, but just based on how he played during the season. He was just incredible for him. Part of the success of how Chase Brown was able to have a good season. And I think that Fairchild definitely is, solidified himself as the starting guard going forward, obviously. But I think that Fairchild just really was good when it came to the run, opened up the lanes for Brown, was good in the pass, mostly when Joe Burrow was back there. And so Dylan Fairchild is easily just going to take on both of those awards as being the best rookie and the most surprising. The most disappointing player is going to go to Cam Taylor-Britt. As I mentioned earlier, DJ Turner kind of stepped into that role of being the cornerback one. Cam Taylor-Britt just did not look good when he was playing out there. He's an athletic freak, someone who can jump out of the gym, but Cam Taylor-Britt just really hasn't been able to use that at an elite level just yet. And I think that the expectation for him was to be that cornerback one for Cincinnati, but he really hasn't done that just yet. And really hasn't kind of lived up to that expectation. Just in terms of his man coverage, he just doesn't seem to want to press, doesn't seem to want to really just kind of be physical with some of the corners. And I feel like there's always a line between corners. It's either you're too physical, which you draw penalties, and then you're not physical enough, which is how you get burnt. And I think Cam Taylor-Britt kind of falls more towards the side of not as physical. So he does join a new team here with Indianapolis in the 2026 offseason. And you hope that maybe he can kind of learn alongside Sauce Gardner, who's been a reliable, just lockdown corner. And I think that Colts defense could actually look a lot better with him kind of being the cornerback two rather than being the cornerback one. And I hope that he kind of succeeds at the next level. But with Cincinnati, I think there were some bright spots, but I think the spots they weren't bright enough, unfortunately. The Cleveland Browns are up next, and this is one of the interesting ones because the MVP is going to go to Myles Garrett, and I think it has to go to him. We'll talk about him as well in the Defensive Player of the Year spot, but Myles Garrett was just an unreal player. I personally believe him to be the best player in the National Football League. His athleticism is through the roof. His production is through the roof. He does it all for the Cleveland Browns. He's just an anchor beyond anchors, if that even makes sense. I don't know what I'm really trying to say there, but Myles Garrett broke the sack record in 2025. He just did it all, man. There's not enough words I can say to really explain how good of a player Myles Garrett is, but just go on YouTube and watch the highlights. That's all you really need to see. Myles Garrett for MVP for the Browns is the easiest selection I can make all day. And I think that he could even get better, to be honest, because by the end of that season, they had guys double teaming him, triple teaming him, preventing him to not get the sack record. And that was something that a lot of teams were not doing. There was a lot of teams that were doing that towards the end of the stretch there. And I think that really just goes to show how important he is to his team, but also how scary he is to other teams. And he's just an incredible player. I really have nothing else more to say about that. But we'll talk now about Quinshon Judkins, and he wins the Offensive Player of the Year award for the Cleveland Browns. And this is actually interesting because he doesn't win Best Rookie. I'm going to give that to a different guy, but Quinshon Judkins comes in after a couple of games, not really sure what the contract situation would look like with Judkins, but he signs his deal. He comes in and immediately becomes the best back in Cleveland. He split carries, obviously, with Jerome Ford was still there. There was still Dylan Sampson, who was another rookie running back, but Quinshon Judkins comes in and he provides a lot when it comes to the running, when it comes to the passing. His jump cuts, his quickness is really something that you look forward to. Did suffer a gnarly injury against the Bills last season, but I think he can definitely come back and kind of really show out and show who he is and show why he plays this sport. And I think that he can definitely be the bell cow back for Cleveland going forward. but it just really depends on how he comes back from this injury. I know he's been working, he's been trying to go into the rehabs and whatnot, but Quinshon Jud, excuse me, Quinshon Judkins is one of my favorite guys in the league, and I think that he can really just be an incredible player just as soon as he comes back from that injury. The best rookie is going to go to Carson Swessinger. For those who do not know, he actually won the defensive rookie of the year award rather this season, and I think he definitely deserved it. You could have also given it to Nick Emanwari, but Carson Swessinger um, kind of just did it all for this team. Like he was an incredible Mike linebacker. He was an incredible tackler. You saw on tape he did not miss a tackle. He was good when it came to coverage. He had a couple interceptions throughout the season, and Swessinger just really kind of was the piece that the Cleveland Browns were missing, especially with the stuff with Jeremiah Owusu Koromoa. Him obviously dealing with a bad neck injury, and then actually there was a report of him now he's going to pursue his master's degree at Harvard, which is first of all really cool, but then his status with football is kind of up in the air now. But Swessinger kind of stepped into that role and really just lit it up throughout the whole season. And being a second rounder, you don't really expect a whole lot. But he kind of just pretty much skipped over those rookie pains and really stepped into that role and just kind of didn't really, miss a beat here. And I think it's very impressive that Schlesinger can kind of come into that role and just ball out immediately. But that's what gives you the Defensive Rookie of the Year award. So Schlesinger is easily going to be the best rookie for the Browns. The most surprising is going to be another rookie. That's Harold Fannin Jr., the tight end out of Bowling Green. And Bowling Green, when he was at Bowling Green, he had a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns, and it's a MAC school, so you don't expect a whole lot of production to translate to the NFL level. But Harold Fannin actually had an incredible year for being, I believe he's a third rounder, maybe a fourth rounder, but he had an incredible year. 72 catches, 731 yards, 6 touchdowns, really kind of stepped into that tight end one role when Njoku dealt with injuries, just lack of play. Fannin stepped in, and he can definitely be the tight end one for this team. You don't know if Njoku's really coming back to the Browns, but Harold Fannin looks promising, and I hope that he can still be consistent with Shedeur Sanders being the quarterback there, with Quinshon Judkins coming back. But really was just an incredible player, and just definitely was worthy of being a surprise because, I mean, how often are you going to get a Bowling Green tight end but be good in the NFL? Not very likely at all. The most disappointing player, as I kind of previously mentioned, was David Njoku. Njoku, who was dealing with injuries throughout the season, did have some games under his belt in 2025, but when he was out there, he just did not look that great. Unfortunately, he's an excellent blocker. Don't get me wrong, but the tight end position has kind of evolved to be just more than a blocker. And we know this already. There's guys that are really good at blocking. There's guys that are really good at catching. And David Njoku kind of has a reputation for being, good at both of those skills. But Njoku, despite being a good blocker, just did not produce when it came to pass catching, when it came to trying to get touchdowns for his team. And I think that the availability part of it is just kind of the reason why, but you got to give the disappointing award to somebody on this team, and it kind of had to go to David Njoku here. And last but not least, the Pittsburgh Steelers are up now, and we have our first three-peat. The MVP, the Offensive Player of the Year, and the most surprising player is going to go to Kenneth Gainwell. And I love this for the Steelers. Kenneth Gainwell really was the best player on the Steelers last season. Despite signing a one-year deal, having to maybe be the running back 3 at the beginning of the year, you still obviously have Jalen Warren. You still have Caleb Johnson, who you drafted. But Kenneth Gainwell comes in and was not only one of the best runners in this league, but also the best pass catcher for the Steelers as well. Kenneth Gainwell just kind of did it all for this offense, especially when Aaron Rodgers kind of obviously is not into his best form yet. But Gainwell just really was an incredible player. Definitely, I would even say the best pass catching running back in the league last season. And now that Kenneth Gainwell is now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it's almost an upgrade for him because Baker Mayfield's the better quarterback. You still have Bucky Irving, who, I mean, kind of was inactive last season, and Gainwell can kind of come in and be the running back 1 for the Bucs. And I would be, even shocked to have him not be the starter by the beginning of the season because of how good he played with Pittsburgh. And I think that the sky's the limits for him. He's kind of been under the radar for most of his career, but he comes in now and just really was an incredible player for the Steelers last season. Kind of pushed him into that playoff berth. And I think that as Gainwell kind of continues to be in this league, I think that he can almost have like a Cordero Patterson type career where he kind of starts off slow. And then the more that you find the niche with him, the more that you find use within the player himself, he really can kind of be useful for an offense. And we saw that last season with Pittsburgh. The defensive player of the year is going to go to Alex Highsmith. He had 9.5 sacks, 36 solo tackles, a forced fumble. The Pittsburgh defense in and of itself was just not to the level of how they used to play, but Highsmith was definitely the best edge rusher last season. TJ Watt dealing with the injuries, dealing with the lack of production. Highsmith kind of was the replacement when it came to Watt. I do know that they play on different sides of the line there, but the combination of Highsmith, Herbig, and Watt is a nasty combo when they're all healthy, but it seems like they all can't get on the field at the same time, unfortunately. But Alex Highsmith comes in, is the anchor on the edge there, and I think that he's definitely worthy of taking on that defensive player of the year spot. Then the best rookie is going to be Derek Harmon. Started off year slow, dealt with injuries, dealt with some problems, unfortunately, with his family. I don't really want to get into specifics with that, but Harmon comes in, and you noticed immediately that when he is off the field, this run defense was terrible. But when he comes on and he's in the middle of that line, it is tough to run against this team. Derek Harmon, being a first rounder, there is a lot of expectation with him, but Harmon really kind of stepped into that immediate role, being alongside Cam Hayward, and ultimately was, I think, better than Hayward this season. And Harmon just really was the anchor in the middle of that defensive line. And I mean, for any defense, he can clog up the middle and stop the run at an elite level. But Harmon doing it for the Steelers alongside all the other weapons could be nasty going forward next season. And then last but not least, we have the most disappointing player going to Jonnu Smith. Smith, who did not have the greatest productive season with the Steelers this season, kind of fell off a cliff. There were 4 tight ends in that Pittsburgh Steelers room that I thought, they could have gone to. Obviously, Pat Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, Connor Hayward also was kind of a wild card, but he was within the rotation, and then Jonnu Smith was there as well. But relative to the previous seasons he had with Atlanta, this one just did not compare, unfortunately. And yes, the room is a little bit bigger, but I think Smith, for the tight end that he is, being a good pass catcher, but also a good blocker, you kind of hope for a little bit more. He goes to the Titans, which is a young team, a team that is still developing their own persona. And I think that Jonnu Smith can kind of play a part as a reliable pass catcher for Cam Ward going forward. And part 2 of this series is officially done. We have part 3 coming next. That's going to be the AFC West teams. As always, thank you so much for tuning into this video. Feel free to drop a like, drop a subscribe. And with that being said, have a good day.